Hey there, how's it going? My name is Brandon Tilt, and this is Tilted Consciousness. Just want you to know that I'm in the middle of the kʷikʷəḷ territory, and among many elder trees, beautiful, beautiful elder trees, grandfathers, grandmothers. Of course, the mosquitoes are back out because it's the time of the year, and this is also the Tseil-Watuth Nations ancestral land. And I'm blessed. I'm blessed for this beautiful day, this beautiful river, this beautiful waterfall, this beautiful mountain, all the birds of this land. Feels good. Feels good to just be out, hanging out in my hammock. Got my djembe behind me. Probably gonna play some drum near the river. But what in the fuck is life? I'm trying a little bit of a different angle. I'm over here. I don't know if you can see me. I don't know. You can certainly hear me. You can certainly hear me, but I don't know how much you can see me. But maybe you can just sort of stare away into this beautiful forestry behind me, or this beautiful tree here, and just sort of listen to my voice as you gaze off into nature in all its glory. And I feel like the topic of love has been coming up a lot in my sphere. And thinking about being a masculine embodied sphere of flesh, being in the body of a male and embodying the spirit of the masculine and the feminine in the spiritual sense, but also maybe in some sort of metaphysical way in the biological sense. You know, love is one of those things where it feels like we just kind of want to grasp onto something or someone. There's kind of a safety to having a person to wake up to, or a person to talk with you or reassure you, or to have the comfort and safety of a person in your space, in your physical bubble, right? When you welcome someone into your physical bubble, how raw, how vulnerable, how sacred is that? Seriously. But I feel like we're all just so lonely on a deeper level, on an existential level. We are alone, but I mean, in this day and age, I feel like we're all so interconnected technology-wise, but we're more alone than ever when it comes to real, meaningful depth to our connections. It's quite tragic, but I think it's also quite beautiful. If you think about longing, if you think about the romantics whom either a man or a woman would go to such great, staggering lengths just to meet and spend time with someone of the opposite sex, and we're just so, I would say, disconnected from that sense of deep longing and, in a sense, scarcity around love. But I would say there's a way that you develop a form of love that embraces all. It's not just about the attention or validation or recognition or security that you might get from a romantic partnership or a polyamorous dynamic or whatever, right? So I suppose what I'm trying to get at is, how comfortable are you in your own skin just loving, just simply allowing the universe to present to you love in all its forms. The primal source of sensuality and sexuality, but also the sacred unification that we are, in a sense, energetically born love, with love, as love. And it is only when we search for love outside of us and we're told by society over and over where it is and how to find it, that we forget the simple truth that we are love and that we've always been love and that we've been fooled into believing that we have to outsource it, probably for the profit of others, right? To be manipulated into believing lies about what love is and isn't. It's almost like you think big pharma, you think big food. What about big relationship? What about the lies? How about the untruths, the non-truths? I don't even want to say they're just blatant lies, because I think there's a lot of validity and truth to this mainstream market that is selling us what relationships are and aren't. Maybe those validities and truths are passed down to us through generations of what our parents experienced and our grandparents experienced as love, what safety has felt like historically in certain cultures. And that's in some sense been the foundation for the modern conceptualization of the white picket fence and the family and this many babies and divine love in a chapel and such and such and such and such. And I think those are all very romantic archetypes. And in a sense, there's a truth to us seeking those things and feeling fulfilled through those things and realistically desiring those things on a deeper level. There's maybe an existential reason. Maybe there's an evolutionary reason. Maybe there's a spiritual reason, right? Something about the divine commitment, right? There's something about the karmic relationship. There's something about the twin flame. There's something about feeling so deeply intoxicated that you're able to feel a kind of divinity through another person. Who's to say that is just simply a lie or an untruth? I don't know. But I'm starting to really just get curious about what my journey of love is versus what has been sold to me and marketed, and what everyone, including myself, have just kind of been led to believe is the only way to live if you want to live a life of love, of commitment, of devotion, of service to the divine feminine or the divine masculine, depending on your gender and your orientation, of course. Watching the crows. I wonder how the crows feel about love, you know? I think sometimes we ought to look to nature to understand more about nature to nature, but so we can understand more about the nature of love. I would say animals understand love very well. I would say we could learn a lot if we were to watch a bird or a bear, perhaps an eagle or a raven, perhaps a duck. And you can understand the different types of love, the different forms of love, the different ways. Oh, birds. Look at that. You know what? My mind seems like it really wants to sink its teeth into this topic. And I think that's kind of where the illusion begins. I want to get really philosophical with this topic, but most of my recent experience of, let's just say, learning about romance and understanding it and understanding what my relationship is to love has just been understanding it through the lens of mind, science, school. In some ways, a really strong knowledge base, but not really, not really attuned to the intuition. I almost feel like one ought to spend a long period of time experiencing love in its rawness, out in a forest and out in a mountain, somewhere away from all the social media, away from the grids, away from electricity, away from anything telling you what it is or isn't. And of course, your wounds, your trauma from your childhood will surface. Your trauma from your past loves will surface. It's inevitable. The deeper you go into relationship, the more you'll be required to show up and heal. Who's to say you need to be taught how to heal yourself? I think there's something to being taught how to heal others, but I think one ought to focus on themselves first, right? So maybe one ought to go out into the mountains and explore what love means to them on their own first, before they ever get caught up in this wild, romantic idea of living in the mountains, just two primal beings with their pain and their trauma and their love and their desire, bringing them along, setting them up for success, quote unquote, or failure, quote unquote. What do those mean in the context of love? I think I have a lot of impressions. Success means happiness, another abstract concept. Success means ease, but does it really? Success in a relationship means, I think collaboration's a good one. I think reciprocity and being attuned to your non-negotiables is a good one. For me, it's reciprocity, right? I think a level of building deeper trust and attunement makes sense to me. But do all these abstract concepts, how do these really hold up in the thick of it? And then let's just see if I could define failure. Is failure becoming disconnected from one another? Is failure building resentment and becoming overly critical and trying to manipulate or change the other person to be more suitable to you in some way? Is failure simply just giving up and choosing another person, being unfaithful or cheating or breaking the trust in some form? Is being unfaithful being overly avoidant or succumbing to an anxious pattern where you start to push the other person away? Is failure in a relationship becoming afraid, so deeply afraid of the other person, of them leaving you? I don't know. Depends on your attachment style, right? Sometimes the research shows that an avoidant person, so someone who has more of a leaning avoidant, such as myself at times, I'm not going to say this is who I am, but the fear of an avoidant is to lose themselves, right? But the fear of an anxious leaning individual would be to have the other person abandon them. But would that fear in itself determine a failed relationship? I don't know. We have so many parameters nowadays around failure that, to me, I almost just feel like those are written into social contracts, which we all just sort of choose to uphold. I mean, if there's harm and abuse present, I would say there's a need to reassess. But I would say there can certainly be wounding that makes it unclear whether a person is being emotionally abusive. Maybe it's quite apparent to an external party, but it's not apparent to the person who's experiencing that abuse. That's where it gets tricky. What if it were a temporary shift into a sort of meaningful depth? Is that a failed relationship? I don't know. Does everyone have to sort of go through trial periods? Why is this crow so loud? Oh my God, dude, come on. Shh. Does everybody have to go through the fire in order to find the peace and the harmony within a relationship? Maybe. I'd say you certainly do within your own mind, within your own spirit, sometimes within your own body. You must go through a sort of metamorphosis to truly become who you are. You sculpt away, you chip away at all of what you are not. And then your past identity, in a sense, dies, and you're reborn as who you truly are. Maybe who you truly always were, maybe since you were a child. And maybe that is where love truly exists, is when one returns to this form of playfulness and this form of gentleness and a kind of unified compassion. It's not just a compassion for sake of other, or it's not just a conditional source of compassion. It's really a unified, almost infinite version. And where does desire fit in all this? This is what's crazy. I was learning about love versus desire. Andrew Huberman interviews Esther, I want to say Perel, but Esther. She's a researcher and she studies this stuff, right? Had some great prompts, exercises, distinctions. I find this wild. There's these 3 different types of conflicts. If you didn't know this, listen up. When you're in a relationship, there's either 2 people who are butting heads, who are in conflict, and they're pursuing each other. Or there's one who's pursuing and then one who's retreating, or there's 2 people who are retreating from each other. And I think that's wild. I don't understand the nuances, what that implies, but seriously, what an interesting concept. If you really were to be like a fly on the wall and watch how some of these arguments play out, you'd be watching one person or 2 people turning towards each other and just hammering each other. Or you got one person who's really in it, really aggravated, really dysregulated likely, and the other person's just full on disassociated and probably retreating. And then of course, the other version of where both of them shut down. I think this is more close to my parents. 2 people shut down, 2 people kind of just avoid, and they're probably not having a conversation they need to have. Maybe there's a lot of distraction, right? Yeah. I don't know, that this to me just felt very novel. Everybody listen, the crows are telling us something about desire. The crows are telling us something about conflict. I don't know what. I feel like when I'm watching the crows and I'm listening to the crows, it's kind of like my ancestors are sort of, I'm Ukrainian and English, maybe with some Kʷik̆vəḻ in there. Whatever ancestors connect to the crows. Feels like they're trying to tell me something. And I wonder what they're trying to tell me right now. I wonder what they're trying to tell me. Maybe to be patient. Maybe to remember that I'm trying to attune to my heart. And yet, I'm kind of stuck in mind right now, aren't I? Hey, mosquito. Get out of here. Whew. I guess I can't do much about those crows, so just sort of listen up. Last thing I wanted to share, which I found was interesting, is the difference between love and desire. Right? We got these two sometimes mutually exclusive, like you can have one or the other, or sometimes they are cross-compatible. You got a love where desire is just so interconnected to the experience of love, or vice versa. You've got this experience of desire, and it's such a fertile space for love to grow within. And some cases, apparently, if you look at your relationship to love and desire and you try to discern the difference between them, sometimes one actually repels the other, which I think is so powerful if you think about it. To have the awareness around that in your own experience or in your relationship. It's like, if you're getting really, really caught up in desire, but it's actually pushing love away, wow. How impactful is that in your life? And then, if you're getting really caught up in love or searching for the experience of love, or your go-to and default in a relationship is to deeply dive into love, how might that be impacting desire and the, let's just call it the fertility of this desire to grow and be strong in that relationship? They being Esther and Andrew Huberman, they just kind of mentioned how, look at the relationship between love and desire. See how each of you and your partner kind of, in a sense, understand love and understand and define desire. What feelings come up when you're thinking of love? What feelings come up when you're thinking of desire? You could have two very different definitions, and this kind of blows my mind. But we're all individualistic in that way. We're all so unique. We're all so different. We're the same in a lot of ways, but we're also unique. And no two people might, I'd say they probably would not agree on what love is, or what success is, or what failure is in a relationship, or what it means to be an abusive person. Sometimes, I would say in many cases, people don't come to terms with if they're being abusive because there's something within themselves that they're not sitting with. So they're so easily rejecting any of their own. They're not willing to own and take ownership for their abusive tendencies. And I would say that would be the indicator of a healthy relationship, is a willingness to grow, taking ownership for our own abusive tendencies, knowing that's collaboration, knowing that love is subjective and needs to be understood, and desire is subjective and needs to be understood. Building trust as well, of course. But then again, what is trust? What builds trust? It's another thing that relates to attachment, right? I'd say trust and attachment are connected in some way. They're correlated. And you think about it, if each of us define trust differently, it's probably because we have different lenses to which we view what contributes to trust. But I would say having a conversation about it doesn't hurt. So let's just end with that. Have a conversation about trust with your partner. And don't be so selfish. In general, I'm not talking about relationships, seriously. I mean, like, the more you turn towards other and the more you acknowledge the efforts, the struggles, the willingness and the right to love that we all inherently have, I feel like you can foster a lot of gratitude for life. And ultimately, that's what it's all about. Gratitude. Gratitude, gratitude, gratitude. All day, all night. The more gratitude you have in your heart, I would say the more open you are to receive life's gifts, and the more open you are to love. Seems really simple when you say it like that, don't you think? It seems really achievable. Seems really tangible. I don't think it's that abstract. Cultivate gratitude, be open to love, and allow the universe in. Whew. It's a good time hanging on my hammock. I think I'm gonna do some drumming now, so wish you well, my friends. Take care for now. Haichika. Thank you.